And what I'd suggest now is that we go to Callan to hear from Francis Coady, the Conservation Officer in Kilkenny County Council, to tell us about the streetscape conservation works in Callan, County Kilkenny.
Okay, thanks, Ian.
Do you want to share your screen, Francis?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, off you go.
Okay, thanks, Ian. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the HDI project in Callan, the Callan Heritage Regeneration Project, which had two elements: St. Mary's Church in the centre of Callan and the Friary Footbridge, which was a bridge, a pedestrian footbridge over the King's River in the town itself. Okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with Callan, it is a town, one of the 4 district towns in County Kilkenny, located about 16 kilometres outside Kilkenny City to the southwest. Okay. It's the town itself has its origins in the 13th century. We can see from this overview here some of the important sites and national monument sites in the town itself. So this aerial photograph shows the King's River, which effectively divides the town, running from east to west. And then the earliest structure we have in the town is the Anglo-Norman moat, just to the top left of the photograph here. And then due east, we have the site of the Augustinian Abbey. And then this is one of the elements of the project, the pedestrian bridge over the King's River, which we will look at in due course. And then down the very bottom of the photograph is St. Mary's Church, again an early 13th century church. So predominantly the medieval core of the town is around here. So developed on the northern side of the river and spilled out probably onto the southern side of the river. So it was interesting to listen to Dr. Philip Crowe earlier talk about Callan. This is the site of the Living Town Initiative, Upper Bridge Street, which there's been a lot of really good work happening there in the last 2 to 3 years. And that is part of the medieval spine of the town itself. Okay, so I've highlighted some of the more important cultural and national monuments within the town. And you can see that over the last number of years in Callan, there's been quite a lot of work from the area office and from Kilkenny County Council and local stakeholders and the department about improving access and movement into these sites and developing these sites in a light touch way. So the moat field in the top left-hand corner, the project has resulted in a walking track which has been inserted in the last year or so, and that has proved to be an amazing amenity, especially with the pandemic in the last number of years and the last number of months, excuse me. So from the moat field, access has been improved onto Lower Bridge Street and another access point then onto the Abbey Meadows, which again access and pathways have been improved, which allow local people to enjoy the cultural site itself. So what we wanted to do as part of the project was we wanted to increase the permeability and make it more attractive from the north side of the town to the south side, while at the same time undertaking work on the public realm on West Street, which is on the bottom center of the screen here, which is the later 19th century addition to the medieval core. Okay, so I can take you through some of that. So the background, none of these projects happen in isolation. There's a lot of work that's been happening in Callan at local level by local inhabitants. As I say, the area office, the county council, the department. So there's, for example, the Callan town network are very active, as is the town team in Callan, which is great to see that people are very much engaged in their local town. The health check proved to be a good start for the town in the last number of years, where there were a number of issues in a number of buildings and streetscapes and public realm potential that were identified. The local area plan, a number of objectives were brought to the fore in 2018, and on the back of that development plan, that area plan, a mobility management plan was created. The Abbey Meadows plan for the site of the Augustinian Abbey was created, and the moat field development as well, which has been going on for about a decade now at this stage. Also, the town centre living initiative was a really positive project for local business owners and people within the town, and it was a real collaborative effect across the board with the department, the local authority, and local businesses as well. So there's a lot happening in Callan in the last number of years, and it really is a collaborative approach. So I'm just going to move on to the project, the Historic Towns Initiative project that we undertook in Callan. So St. Mary's Church is a 13th century church. The western tower still stands, albeit most of the ruin that is on the site at the minute dates to the 15th and 16th century. So this is the public face. This is facing onto Green Street, which is the main street in the town at the minute. It's a 19th century extension onto the medieval core. And what we have is we have wrought iron railings and limestone elements, piers, plinths engaged, pillars at either side as well. So this is only one of the elevations containing railings and stone masonry. Okay, so this has been quite topical for a number of years now, dating back maybe 10 to 15 years. The serious deterioration in the fabric of the boundary of St. Mary's has really become much of an eyesore in recent years, and it's become quite topical. It comes up quite a lot at various public meetings. So we looked at tackling this and see could we arrest the decay of the ironwork and the stonework, and to enhance the historic fabric and the public realm. So the bottom left-hand corner, we can see where the front plate of the gate has come away. There's been an awful lot of corrosion. The random rubble stone wall under the limestone plinth had started to disintegrate. The plinth itself had started to push out due to soil heave to the rear. And then the bottom right, we can see the like of the sort of damage over years of neglect and deterioration, with finians were missing, bosses had split, and really it looked very much a sorry state. More of the former condition, some of the later repairs had started to delaminate, as we can see in the top left-hand corner. In the top right-hand corner, this is an image of the gates into St. Mary's. So they were no longer hanging properly. They weren't closing. They were missing finians, bosses, and they were just in a really, really poor state of repair. We can see in the bottom left-hand side where a later repair on the gusset of the gate itself had deteriorated and decayed. The bottom rail, this was quite common, where there had been movement and areas of localized corrosion had just split the bottom rail. So the ironwork was one part of it. Obviously there was quite a lot of masonry that was still in place on the boundary, and that you can see from the top left-hand corner was in a bad state of repair as well. What had happened over the last number of years, that the ironwork had corroded, had expanded, and had split the stone. So what we had was a number of fissures Some were structurally unsound, and they needed to be taken down. We can see the central image here with the pier, which was completely out of plumb. It needed to come down and be reinstated. Again, the pinnacle here on the cap of the pier, completely gone. And then we see various elements, whether it be from localized spalling or from direct impact on the bottom photograph here of the base of the pier. Again, the engaged pier on the wall, a lot of them had to come down. They were dislodged, they were structurally unsound. Okay, so there was quite a lot of work involved in compiling a project team for this project, and I can talk a little bit about that later on. But I suppose the first thing was that we needed to have a proper plan in place, because we had iron workers, and we had stonemasons, and we had archaeologists as well. So in the first photograph on the left, you can see that the pier is being removed. A sondage has been excavated to the rear of the plinth, which allowed the plinth to be taken down, the wall to be repaired, the plinth to be reinstated. And then on the right hand side, you can see where the plinth has been reinstated and the soil has been reinstated to the rear as well. So we have evidence from the 19th century that this elevation where the railings currently stand was the site of a terrace of houses, which really helped us, because before I knew that, I was quite nervous that we were going to find human remains, but we didn't, which was great, and that allowed the work to proceed quite quickly and allowed the contractors, the masons and the iron workers to get in and do their job quite quickly. Okay, so it was really about two bodies of work working, two contractors working in tandem with each other. So the railings were removed, were brought to the workshop in Dublin, so where they were cleaned, and there was a lot of repairs that were required. New cast iron finions were created, wrought iron was brought in from the UK and hand forged within the workshop. And the bottom right hand corner, we can see where the stonemasons are reinstating the limestone piers. So we always try to salvage as much as possible on these conservation projects. Initially, we called up for the replacement of some of the blocks within the pier, but we managed to save them all. And the only new element onto the pier itself is the pinnacle, which was just perished beyond repair. So that's a really positive, that we're retaining 19th century fabric, we're repairing it, and we're reinstating it. Okay, so moving on, some of the repair works you can see on the left hand side, the front plate with the smith's mark has still been retained. You can still see it in the finished gate now. Then some of the stone indents, some high level craftsmanship here in regards to the dressing of the limestone indents and the tooling. The bottom right hand side will show the gusset, which needed to be replaced on the gate itself, all done to a very, very high level. The gates from the rear, these are the gates reinstated. So there's a marked contrast with the earlier photograph where the gates were no longer hanging, missing architectural elements. Here we have the gates have been reinstated, and the details have been reinstated along with the piers hanging properly, and two new threshold stones were required as well. On the a new shoe was required, which was leaded into the threshold stone as well. And these are the gates from the front. So they straight away they make a massive impact and a massive impression on the site, and they make the St. Mary's church itself and the grounds of the church a little bit more attractive. So now the project wasn't completed because it was supposed to be completed this month, with a railing to be reinstated tomorrow actually, but the restrictions have put a halt to that. So just moving on to the second part of the project. This is the pedestrian bridge, or the Friary footbridge that I mentioned earlier on. So you can see the decking is a much later decking, Harris fencing, not attractive at all, would not entice anyone to use it really. And the piers itself are noted on the record of protected structures. So the piers and the associated cutwaters and the abutments were in a really, really poor state. So we can see that from a lot of vegetation growth, the dislodging of some of the stones, perishing of the lime mortar. So that was part of the project as well. And just moving on to the finished project, which the decking itself was looked after by the area office and is not part of this project. But the Historic Towns Initiative was invaluable to conserving and repairing the cutwaters, the piers, and the abutments themselves. So it makes this element much, much more attractive. And it also links the photograph on the left. You can see is taken from the north side of the Kings River looking south, which we can look at the 18th century Friary complex. And then the photograph on the right is taken from the south looking north, which has the Augustinian Abbey. So again, you're linking two parts of the town, you're linking two cultural sites, and that permeability and that attractive element will entice people into the area as well. Okay, so just I wanted to talk briefly about some of the challenges, and I know a lot of people have discussed the challenges previously, and it was no different for ourselves. I suppose the Kilkenny County Council had applied for the Historic Towns Initiative in February, and we weren't successful in the initial tranche of funding. Now, thankfully, we got an offer in September to undertake these works. So the schedule was always going to be very, very tight. And when you add in the fact that St. Mary's Church is a national monument, we needed consent to start the work. We weren't on site until the 19th of October, which is quite late to be starting a project. But I think we would have got it done if it wasn't for COVID, which has just been very, very problematic for everyone, I think. And I think coming into this year as well, and all the grant schemes as well, it's just something we have to factor in and be aware of. And by association, then the availability of trades. There's been a lot of talk here about skills, and a very, very positive talk, and I hope that can be moved on, because we went through the procurement process, and we were very lucky. We got two very, very good contractors to undertake the work, but really there was a lot of people that just couldn't reach on it. They didn't. The earlier lockdown of 7 weeks had pushed back a lot of projects, and people just didn't quote for the project, or just couldn't take it on. Brexit, obviously, when we were undertaking the project, there was no deal agreed at the time. There was a lot of uncertainty. A lot of the raw materials for the ironworks, especially the wrought iron, had to come from the UK, and that led to a delay as well. And I suppose just looking ahead this year, for if there are materials coming in from the UK, just to factor that in, that's really important. So, and then the other piece of advice that I would give is just be prepared. So, having a strategy and working in a collaborative way has proved invaluable. And I suppose this St. Mary's project, the Conservation Office commissioned a survey on the railings in 2019. And that was really the basis for our application to the Heritage Council in 2020. So you almost have to plan a year, 2, maybe 3, 4 years in advance. But there's a lot of people within the local community and within the local authority and the department that are there to help. And a collaborative process is a very positive way of doing it. And then just to finish, I'd just like to say thanks to the Heritage Council. I've dealt with Amanda and Ian predominantly with Ian, and this level of support has been great. So it's very much appreciated, and also the funding itself has really opened up two sites now in Callan, which are going to make the cultural sites more attractive. They're going to increase accessibility. We're looking at St. Mary's Church now, and the graveyards, about potentially opening up the graveyard, looking at maintenance, how we can maybe introduce interpretive signage and bring the grounds back into the public realm again, for the local people. And of course, thanks to everyone for listening, and the previous panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. That was brilliant. I see a question came in from Sean about the degree to which archaeology was an issue in the graveyard. Could you give a quick comment on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was a little bit nervous about archaeology because we were effectively digging a trench in a graveyard. But as I say, the fact that in the 18th and early 19th century, there's reference there to a terrace of buildings, we knew it had been disturbed previously, but we still had to go through the ministerial consent. We had to engage an archaeologist to monitor all the excavations. Any disarticulated human bone that was found had to be logged. So there was a link in there with the department as well. So, but we had to go through the 4-week consent process, so it was a factor, but thankfully it didn't delay the schedule of the project.